Welcome to this third episode of our 2023 AARP series on brain health. This week's program is Understanding Parkinson's disease, Lewy body dementia, and related neurological disorders. I'm Lisa Denton Cooper, and I'm coming to you from AARP. And I'm so happy to be your host as we dive in all month into what everyone at every age needs to know about our brain health and neurocognitive disorders and what we can all do to become more empowered on behalf of ourselves and our friends and family and our communities. Today, I am going to be joined by three incredibly knowledgeable guests: Dr. Hank Paulson, Kristen Rossi, and Barry Kaufman. They're going to share with us what we need to know about Parkinson's disease and other adult neurological diseases such as Lewy body dementia. What sorts of services and treatments are available? How do we access those services and treatments? And what are some successful strategies that they can share for living well? And then for the rest of the hour, we want to hear from you. So we'll take your questions live and we'll answer as many of them as we can. All you need to do, if you have questions or comments, is look into that chat box that you'll see right underneath the screen where the video is playing here. Just type them in and we'll, again, try to answer as many of those as possible today. But now it is my great honor to introduce our guests today. First, we are joined by Dr. Hank Paulson. Dr. Paulson is the Lucille Groff Professor of Neurology for Alzheimer's disease and related disorders in the Department of Neurology at the University of Michigan. He currently directs the Michigan Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, and he co-directs the Michigan Neuroscience Institute. Dr. Paulson received his medical degree and doctorate in cell biology from Yale University in 1990 and completed a neurology residency and neurogenetics and movement disorders fellowships at the University of Pennsylvania. He was in the University of Iowa's neurology faculty, and he was there until 2007 when he moved to University of Michigan. Go Blue. And next, we are joined by Kristen Rossi. And she is the Chief Executive Officer of the Michigan Parkinson Foundation. Prior to her role at the Michigan Parkinson Foundation, Kristen worked for many years at the Alzheimer's Association, where she developed a passion for neurodegenerative diseases, the effect they have on families, and the importance of ensuring that families and caregivers connect with community resources and supports so no one feels alone or isolated. And I know you are going to love meeting our third guest, Barry Kaufman. Barry has been living with Lewy body dementia, which we'll sometimes refer to today as LBD. He's been living with this for the past 14 years. He's an active participant in LBD research and support groups and an advocate for living well with dementia. He's a member of the National Council of Dementia Minds and serves on the steering committee for the Michigan Dementia Coalition. And you can read our speakers' full bios, as well as my own, by clicking on the Overview tab on your screen. Again, that's just below where your video is playing. And in just a moment, we're going to hear from each one of you, one at a time. And I know Dr. Paulson and Director Rossi have some PowerPoint slides to share with us. But first, while we're all together here on the screen, I want to just touch base and hear from you, ask you to share a 1-minute summary of what you're going to share with us today, what you hope our viewers will take away from today's program. So let's say, Dr. Paulson, let's start with you.
Sure. Great. Well, firstly, it's great to be here today, and thank you all for coming to attend this session. You heard that I'm a neurologist. I trained in movement disorders, and that's a big part of neurology. Parkinson's disease involves movement problems, but I also work in an Alzheimer's space where I see cognitive disorders. And really, I think you need to think about Parkinson's disease and Parkinson's disease dementia and Lewy body dementia and dementia with Lewy bodies as merging those two together in some way. So that's the first point. The second point is some of the medications that we give in Alzheimer's might even be better for people who have Lewy body dementia. And the third thing I'll say is remember that song, I say tomato, you say tomato. I say potato, you say potato. Potato, tomato, LBD, DLB, PDD, PD. What are we talking about here? Does it make a difference when we mention these terms? So I'll try to describe those terms and what it means and why it matters to us as clinicians when we see someone with movement problems, with cognitive issues, or even just cognitive issues, whether it might be DLB or LBD or PDD or PD.
Great. And Kristen, what about you? What should our viewers at home be prepared to learn from you here today?
Well, again, thank you for having me as well. And I would just say I'm really going to springboard off of what you hear from Dr. Paulson. You're going to hear a lot about the science behind what goes into cognitive problems when you get to that point in Parkinson's disease, or if you get to that point in Parkinson's disease. And our goal at the Michigan Parkinson Foundation is to ensure that you have the resources and information that you need to live well with Parkinson's and live a full life with Parkinson's. So what I'm really going to focus on is our programs and services that we offer right here in Michigan, but many of them are offered virtually as well. So they're really for anyone who's tuning in today. So I'm going to do this through talking about our 4 pillars of support, which are really socialization, making sure that you're not living in isolation with this disease and getting the resources that we have for you. Exercise, which is proven to slow the progression of Parkinson's disease, even in those later stages. Education through our symposiums and our virtual education series and much more. And then our respite care assistance program as well. So we're just going to be going through the whole spectrum of what we offer. And we're really hoping that you get some of the information that you need from today and that you join us, that you join the Michigan Parkinson Foundation in getting care and support to all people living with Parkinson's in Michigan and beyond.
Thank you, Kristen. And Barry, what do you think our viewers will learn from you today? Or what do you think they might be surprised to learn?
Well, I think they might be surprised to learn that dementia and cognitive issues are not an all-end situation. People with cognitive issues can and want to contribute to family life and to community. So basically, I want to stress that people with cognitive issues don't wish to be stigmatized. They don't want to be ignored, and they want to be independent.
Program. So let's dive in. Dr. Paulson, we're going to start with you. What can you tell us about these sorts of adult neurological diseases? What do we need to know about the science and any scientific improvements that have been made regarding these conditions and brain health generally? And as a reminder for everyone at home, if you have questions as we go along, feel free to type them in the chat box underneath the video on the screen.
Great. I guess my slides will pull up now for me to talk through here. First, I want to say, Barry, thank you for your comments. I say to my patients all the time, don't let this disease own you, you own it. And what you just mentioned is that people who have cognitive issues can continue to live very productive lives and very stimulating lives. So thank you for that. And I look forward to talking to you further. Now, you all know who these 2 people are. And probably many of you actually saw Muhammad Ali when he lit the torch at the Olympics in Atlanta many years ago. He had great difficulty because of his Parkinsonism. He had a tremor. He had very stiff movements. It was obvious that for many years he had profound movement issues before he ultimately succumbed to the disease in 2016. And on the right, we have Robin Williams. Robin Williams had a mysterious psychiatric problem. He suffered in ways that I don't know because I, of course, did not see him as a patient, but his diagnosis was not established until his brain was looked at, and he was found to have Lewy body dementia. These are two very different diseases, and yet they are on a spectrum. They share underlying neuropathology, and they merge together in important ways. And so that's one of the key take-homes from my talk today. So first, a little bit about me. I run an Alzheimer's center that is truly a statewide center. It connects these three universities, University of Michigan, Michigan State, and Wayne State, and we work across the state to try to understand the cause of dementia. You may have heard of amyloid. Amyloid is one of the key proteins that accumulates in Alzheimer's disease. It does not accumulate in Parkinson's disease or Lewy body dementia, but we focus on the things that contribute to brain dysfunction or brain problems beyond amyloid. That's our theme, and that includes the Lewy body dementias. We also spend a lot of time focusing on the causes of cognitive impairment in underrepresented and underserved groups and historically minoritized groups. And I will say that we are very proud to be home to the Carl Rennie Lewy Body Dementia Initiative. When Carl Rennie, a very talented faculty member in our department at the university, developed a mysterious and troubling disease, the diagnosis was not established for several years. And when he died, his wife, Tamara, said, we need to get the word out. So we have this initiative that spends a lot of time educating people about Lewy body disease and helps with like 6 different support groups in the state. So what is dementia? I think you all know what dementia is, but it's a term for a decline in mental ability that is severe enough to interfere with one's normal everyday life. A lot of things can cause dementia, and dementia is an umbrella term. Under that term, there are specific types of dementia, like Alzheimer's or frontotemporal dementia or Lewy body dementia. And then there are environmental causes or sort of social causes that can contribute to dementia, alcohol-induced dementia. The point here is that genes and environment and aging all contribute to whether one develops a dementia or not and what that particular type of dementia might be. And when we think about the various forms of dementia, we can draw them as slices of a pie. And as you can see here, the gigantic piece of the pie is Alzheimer's disease. And there's smaller pieces, but there's still big pieces of the pie, which include Lewy body dementia, which is probably the second most common cause of dementia. Now, you might be saying, why does he have a slice of cherry pie? Well, we are in Michigan, and it is the cherry state. But the point here is that the best kind of pie is a runny pie. And the reality is this pie that I'm showing you of the disease states is not accurate because there's a lot of runniness in this pie. There's a tremendous amount of overlap across the dementias. So it's actually quite rare when I see someone who has died from dementia that they have one thing going on, just Alzheimer's or just vascular. More often it's 2 or 3 or sometimes even 4 different things. And so the reality is in that sentence at the bottom right, many brains show both Lewy body pathology and Alzheimer's pathology. That becomes really important when we talk about Parkinson's disease and how many people can develop dementia as their Parkinson's disease progresses over years. Well, Lewy body diseases have Lewy bodies in them. You say, what is a Lewy body? Well, it's a neuropathological structure. And in that pink picture there from a brain, in the middle there, a little bit to the right of where the arrow is, there's a very homogeneous pink blob, a round blob. That is a Lewy body. It's an accumulation of protein. That protein is called alpha-synuclein. If I stained that section with an antibody to that protein, it would light up really intensely. These were described over a century ago by Fritz Heinrich Lewy, hence the name Lewy body. He actually was a student of Alois Alzheimer's, and I think you can probably guess what Alois Alzheimer's discovered. He discovered the plaques and tangles of Alzheimer's disease. Lewy bodies are found in Parkinson's disease, they're found in Lewy body dementia, and they're found in other conditions. And so here are the Lewy body disorders, which we also call the synucleinopathies. Why? Because they all have accumulation of synuclein in the brain. You can see Parkinson's disease, you can see dementia with Lewy body disease, multiple system atrophy or MSA, and primary autonomic failure. Now, I've drawn them as separate circles, and you can see there's an overlap between DLB and PD because, in fact, there is a lot of overlap between these conditions. And I did talk about tomato earlier on. What's the difference between DLB and LBD? DLB is the term for a dementia with Lewy bodies where the primary feature is the neuropsychiatric and cognitive issues. And Lewy body dementia is a broader term for those individuals who have alpha-synuclein as the pathology, but have dementia. So that includes both Parkinson's disease dementia and dementia with Lewy body disease. So what is the difference between those two? And there's a lot of overlap. Parkinson's disease dementia is a dementia that develops slowly over the course of time in someone who has Parkinson's disease. This would be someone who has the motor features of Parkinson's, tremor, stiffness, quietness of voice, difficulty walking, and develops cognitive changes. It's very common in Parkinson's disease for cognitive changes to occur. But when it gets to the point where it's severe enough to impair activities, it becomes a dementia. That's Parkinson's dementia. Dementia with Lewy body disease, DLB, is different. Usually the first symptoms are cognitive or psychiatric. And in some people, they never develop Parkinsonism or movement problems at all. So we can't look to the movement disorder to say, aha, it's definitely DLB. We look to other features. And the next slide is the most important slide of my talk. And this is how I approach someone who comes to my clinic. If they've got cognitive issues, they've got difficulty with memory and attention, and maybe have problems with executive function, which is planning or multitasking, I'll ask the question, do you see things that aren't real? Do you have visual hallucinations? I look for Parkinsonism on the exam. I ask, are you acting out your dreams? Are you talking and moving in your sleep? That's REM sleep behavior disorder. Do you have good days and bad days? Or are you sleeping extensive amounts of time during the day? Those are the kind of clues that can help me determine whether someone might actually have DLB. And why does this matter? Well, for two reasons. One, if someone does have DLB as opposed to Alzheimer's disease, they're much more likely to have a problem with some kind of drugs. Some drugs, like certain antipsychotic drugs, can cause stiffness and slowness, and that can be a real issue for someone who has DLB. And the last thing at the very bottom is let's talk about cholinesterase inhibitors. You might think about donepezil or brand name Aricept as being a drug for Alzheimer's. It enhances memory. Honestly, I would say it's more effective in people who have DLB. It seems to help them more often in a more robust way. So whereas I will always offer a medication like a cholinesterase inhibitor to someone who has dementia, I'm really pretty insistent they consider giving it a trial if I think they have DLB, because they may have a positive response to that. Now, this is not a talk about Alzheimer's, it's not a talk about Lou Gehrig's disease, but I want you to remember that the synucleinopathies share this accumulation of abnormal proteins with all these conditions, which Ronald Reagan had Alzheimer's, Lou Gehrig had ALS, Woody Guthrie had Huntington's disease. These are all diseases where proteins tend to accumulate in the brain. And in this next slide, we think now in dementia of the, not the four horsemen of the apocalypse, not the four horsemen of Notre Dame, these football players, but the four horsemen of dementia. So the plaques and tangles of Alzheimer's disease are the beta amyloid and tau proteins. And then there's this other protein called TDP-43 that accumulates in some conditions. And you can see there in the lower left, alpha-synuclein is the fourth protein in this group. And the thing I'm going to leave you with is that biomarker testing is here now for many of these proteins, and they will soon enter clinical practice. We will be able to do blood tests, in some cases still cerebrospinal fluid tests, but blood tests that can tell us whether you have alpha-synuclein accumulate in your brain. Do you have amyloid in your brain? Do you have both of those proteins in your brain? And I think this is going to become part of how we help to determine the future course for someone who has the first features of Parkinson's disease or has the first features of dementia. Could it be that this is DLB? Could it be that it's Alzheimer's? Could it be that it's PD? And that might really change the kind of therapies we would give to those individuals. So I hope this has been helpful to you. I'm looking forward to your questions and hope that I can answer some of those. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Dr. Paulson. It is so important, and it's really stuff that we don't necessarily hear about, and the importance of knowing about these different sorts of conditions. We've got some questions in the chat already, and we're going to come back to those a little bit later in the program. But as we continue to dive into this, next I'd like to invite Kristen Rossi back up on the screen to talk a little bit more about Parkinson's disease in particular, and the types of services and treatments and things that are available for people living with Parkinson's and their families. And really importantly, how is it that people can access those services in their own lives?
Thank you so much, Lisa. Yes, I'm really excited to share with everybody all that we have, all the resources we have. So jumping right in, and just to give a little bit more of an introduction, I know Lisa already did it, but I come from the Alzheimer's space. So this is a space really near and dear to my heart. And we do see toward the end stages of Parkinson's disease, cognition really does come into play. It's more and more of the calls that we receive in those later stages. And like Dr. Paulson, I have a particular focus on underserved communities, how we outreach to underserved communities, and how we can focus on families as well. So just a little bit more on Michigan Parkinson Foundation, so you have a little bit of a basis of information. You see this 40th anniversary logo. We've got it for this year only because it is our 40th year anniversary. But we're governed by a board of directors and advised by a professional advisory board, which is made up of mostly movement disorder specialists. And if you're a person living with Parkinson's right now, I advise, if you don't already have a movement disorders neurologist, that you give us a call and we can help make recommendations of how to find the right doctor for you. But this is really the best person to work with you in your Parkinson's. We serve the entire state of Michigan, and we are independent and not affiliated with any national organization. So all the funds we raise in Michigan stay in Michigan. But a lot of our programs, like I said, go way beyond Michigan, and I'll talk about those more next. So yeah, just a little bit more on what Parkinson's disease is. Dr. Paulson hit pretty well on this, talking about this in addition to Lewy body dementia and other types of dementia. But it's a progressive neurological disorder. It usually affects people in their middle age and older adults as well. The signs and symptoms for people with Parkinson's are different for everyone. So we always say here, if you've met one person with Parkinson's, you've met one person with Parkinson's. I think a lot of times people think of that Muhammad Ali, lighting the torch, that severe tremor, but not everyone with a tremor has Parkinson's. Not everyone with Parkinson's has a tremor. And we do help people not only with Parkinson's disease, but other related movement disorders here at the Michigan Parkinson Foundation as well. Essential tremor. We also work with people with MSA and PSP as well. And although Parkinson's disease cannot be cured, medications might significantly improve the symptoms and quality of life. So that's why we really stress the connection to a good movement disorder specialist. And then some of the early signs that you see with Parkinson's disease may be mild and can go unnoticed at first. And we're going to talk about those next. So some of the early symptoms are that tremor, the stooped or hunched posture, micrographia or small handwriting, a loss of smell, sleep disturbances, which are very common in Lewy body dementia as well, difficulty moving or walking, constipation, soft or low voice, and this is why a lot of our speech therapy programs are so important, a masked face or kind of a flat affect, and then dizziness or fainting, that orthostatic hypotension. So a lot of people report that even after they've been diagnosed with the disease, they notice these early symptoms, sometimes 10 years before they were diagnosed. So what can we do to help? So the Michigan Parkinson Foundation focuses on people affected by Parkinson's and related disorders, their loved ones and care partners, and the physicians and other professionals that help treat their Parkinson's disease. And our vision is really to ensure that the Parkinson community has access to responsive, compassionate, and quality care so that you can live with a great quality of life. This is a little bit on our team. We call ourselves small but mighty. There's one person not pictured, but we have 8 people, and we serve the entire state of Michigan and beyond, like I said. And we're going to go through each of our 4 pillars of support. So starting with the first one, it's really socialization. And this calls to something that Barry said earlier, that you want to really get outside of the stigma of this disease and live fully within the community. And we have programs to help you do that. And the first is our support groups. We have 76 support groups throughout the state. And considering that Michigan has 83 counties, I feel that we're pretty well represented in this area. And I encourage people to look on our website at the map of where all the support groups are. We also have a new program for mentorship. And really, this is that one-on-one talking to someone who's going through something similar to you. So again, if you've met one person with Parkinson's, you've met one person with Parkinson's. So this will help you connect to, maybe you're a veteran. We have other veterans you can talk to. Maybe you're a young onset and you have young kids at home and you want to talk to someone about what that might look like. So the socialization piece, I can't really stress it enough. It's just key to making sure that no one is feeling isolated and alone in this disease. Our second pillar is exercise. And we do this through our programs offered 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday at 10 a.m. And they're taught by licensed physical therapists who specialize in Parkinson's disease. So anyone can join these. We've had people from Canada, we've had people from England, California, all over the world and the country join in. We also put just kind of the basic tenets for what good exercise looks like. So this is one from the Parkinson Foundation that just really shows what we should all be doing, but definitely people with Parkinson's, to make sure that you're doing all you can to stave off some of the effects of the disease. And it's been proven that exercise can slow the progression of Parkinson's. All of our exercise activities are on our YouTube page. You can go to this website, our YouTube website, to find all of our exercises and to just check out our instructors. We have walk events throughout the entire state. So we do 4 throughout the year. We just had our last one in Grand Rapids last week. So please feel free to check out one of these. It's kind of our biggest support group and best way to exercise. And we do this every fall. This is just some pictures from our Detroit walk. And then speech therapy. I know we talked earlier about that low voice. And I can't stress enough how important speech therapy is. So we work with many different programs to bring you speech therapy virtually or in person. So please reach out to us about this. This one's about the Parkinson Voice Project, but we also work with LSVT Big and Loud. Our third pillar is education, and this really comes in the form of our education series. Third Tuesday of every month, we do a targeted topic that is asked for by the community. We do a symposium every year, and I should say we just found the date for our 2024 symposium, and that's going to be April 5th. We also do disability consultation. We have a couple lawyers on our board who do free disability consultation for anybody who needs it. We have information and referrals. We have caregiving videos. So this is just kind of some of the topics that we talk about in our virtual and in-person education seminars. Anything from vision and Parkinson's to how to talk about your kids to elder law and estate planning. And then we have these wonderful caregiver training videos that I encourage you to check out on our YouTube station. They're really made for certified nursing assistants, but they're great for family caregivers as well. And this is a little bit more on our pro bono legal advice. And then our last pillar that I'll just kind of wrap up with is respite care. And we define this as help and support mostly to the caregiver. Because when you do get to the later stages of Parkinson's disease, oftentimes you're dealing with a number of different things, from some of the movement disorder side of things, from some of the motor symptoms to completely non-motor, and it is the hallucinations, it is the dementia sometimes setting in, and caregivers really have found themselves needing help, and this is where we come in. So we offer $2,000 per family per year in respite care assistance. for a total of $200,000 that we give out every year. And we actually hit this number earlier in the summer. So we're going above and beyond to provide respite care to the community. We do the same for medication assistance at $600 per family per year. And if you've been on Parkinson's medications, I know this goes by fast, but we have a social worker on staff that helps work with you if this isn't enough and you need some further assistance programs. We also have a mobility loan closet, and we move things out really quickly. We try not to keep them in-house. We get them into the hands of people who need them. And then this is just a little bit more on some of our events in the community. We've got our gala coming up on November 3rd. If you're interested, please call us, reach out, let us know. Here's some of our third-party events. But this is our contact information. Please check out our website. We just redid our logo on our website, so it's new to you. And we've got our phone number up here. And I just really can't stress enough, just to call us. We can help. You are not alone in this disease.
Thank you for that, Kristen. And again, I know we've got some great questions in the chat, and we'll plan to come back to that in just a little bit during the program. But next, I'd like to invite back up on the screen to share a little with us about his experience living with Lewy body dementia, Mr. Barry Kaufman. And thank you for being with us today, Barry. I know you as an advocate, and you have been an inspiration for so many people living with dementia or other types of neurocognitive disorders. I was hoping that you could tell us a little about your story. How and when did you first find out that you have Lewy body dementia?
Well, as you had stated before, Lisa, 14 years ago, they found out, or I shouldn't say they found out, there was suspicion about the fact that I had a cognitive issue because driving, I would get lost, and things such as walking, I would bump into things. So both my wife and my daughter is a neuropsychologist at the University of Michigan, thought that this is something that has to be looked into. So I was referred to the Geriatric Center at the University of Michigan, where I was given to Dr. Judith Heidebrink, who worked with me for about 6 months so we could determine exactly what I had. Was it Parkinson's? Was it Lewy body? Was it White disease? So we took a long, long look at this. And after testing, we came to the conclusion that it was indeed LBD. And that's basically how we found out that I had LBD.
You talked a little about some of those early symptoms that you experienced. What other types of symptoms have you experienced?
Well, with LBD, the symptoms I've been experiencing is that I have difficulty walking. That is the one thing. And also, in conjunction with the walking, I have balance issues, and they're together. I have a slight tremor, and that slight tremor is in my left hand, and I also have it in my leg. And it's not very noticeable, and I'm able to control it by the use of medication. And that helps a lot. And things like the tremors, I experience hallucinations. And that, in a lot of ways, that's funny. Some of my hallucinations are hilarious. Some of my hallucinations are scary as all good, and it scares the living sugar out of me. And technical term, cleaning it up a bit. But I have a technique. I all I have to do is go like this with my hand, and the hallucination will disappear. Hallucinations that I have are basically at night, but I do have daily hallucinations, but rarely. A lot of times, some of the hallucinations I might be hearing music, or I might be seeing a gray object walk across in front of me. And oh my goodness, one of the funniest thing about hallucinations is that it's a bit of humor. In fact, it's something my wife and I share. I've had hallucinations about Annette, and she always referred
That was your
to,
wife, right?
right, Annette is my wife, and she's always referred to the hallucination of her as that is her evil twin sister. So we just wave her away. Other things I've experienced is executive functioning. I have difficulty in multitasking. I have difficulty in some respects with short-term memory and in some respects of planning. And the thing that's disturbing about that is that's what I was doing at Blue Cross Blue Shield. I was doing all of those things, and it was a large part of my responsibility. And the other thing is, I think is important to point out, is I have difficulty with spatial relationships. I Because of that, I was taken off the road. I no longer drive. And the reason why is that I was missing signs. And we thought about it, and I said that there might be somebody on the side of the road walking, and I might miss that sign, but I might not miss that person. So it was decided that it would be best if they took me off the road. I'll be honest with me, angered me, but it took me a short period of time to realize why it was done. But other than that, those are some of the symptoms that I've experienced, Lisa.
You know, I am struck always when I talk with you, but just, now as well, about how you use humor in particular in talking about things that I think seem really pretty scary to other people, like the idea of hallucinations, and how you continue to live well with meaning and purpose and joy. And I'm wondering if you could share some tips that you might have for other people with LBD or other types of dementia. Like, I know we had a question in the chat about exercise. Have you found exercise to be helpful, or music, or what else?
Humor is an important part of my life as it relates to LBD. Uh, I understand what LBD is, thanks to the people at the University of Michigan who have helped me, people like Dr. Paulson. And I thank Hank for all of the assistance that his staff has given me. But the thing is, humor is very important to me. Uh, I laugh at this disease and a lot of times. Uh, Giving you an example how Annette laughed at it. I had one hallucination, scared the heck out of me. I saw a gorilla. It was ugly. And the next day, what do I find at breakfast? Was a box of cereal, gorilla cereal. So Annette threw that at me. And
So you had a hallucination with a gorilla, and then your wife, when she was shopping, she saw cereal
just
that
made
had
fun of it.
a gorilla on the box, Gorilla Crunch. And so you had that for breakfast next morning.
I laugh at some of the things that I used to do. like the 5K. Now I'm volunteering for the 5K crawl. And,
Awesome.
and
I know you talked about listening to jazz, I think. Is that
I
one of
yes, I listen to jazz, but I also listen to classical music, and quite a bit of classical music, and for that it's very very relaxing, Lisa. And I put my earphones on and turn on my radio, or I'll put a disc on and listen to the music, be it jazz. I'm not talking about hip hop or any of the other forms of music, but just nice music, nice jazz. Uh,
yeah.
like there's a program I listen to, it's called Watercolor. It has smooth jazz. I have it on my Sirius radio. And for me, that's, as I say, those are some of the relaxing things. Other relaxing things I have is I'm an avid reader. I'm always reading a book or something. Sometimes I may have two books going at the same time. And, but for me, that's interesting because I feel that reading has a effect on my ability, on my cognitive issues. And I go to the gym. I go to the gym twice a week, exercise, and which I feel is important. These are just some of the things that I do to improve the quality of my life, and also suggest things like that to friends of mine uh, who don't have cognitive issues, as well as to some of the people I know who do have cognitive issues.
So all these habits that are healthy habits for people, whether they have dementia or not, really, in sounds like a lot of cases, you see benefits in your own
Mm-hmm.
life when you do those things.
The thing is, Lisa, I want to keep active. I don't want to sit back and I hate to use this term, turn into a yeah. And you know what I'm talking about. But I have to be active. I have to be challenged. I'm challenged with crossword puzzles. I'm challenged with Sudoku. I'm challenged with bridge. These are things that I'm challenged with and thoroughly enjoy them because they are challenging and they make me think.
Well, so that is all great advice. So thank you so much, Barry, for sharing that with us. It's really the insider view of Lewy body dementia. And I see we do have a lot of questions in the chat box. So I'd like to invite all of our speakers back up on the screen now so we can answer as many of these questions as we can. And I'm going to try to go fast through them because we have a lot. But if you still have questions as they're coming in and you want to keep typing things into the chat, feel free to do that. One real quick, I want to address, Karen had asked us about the slides.
Yes,
And
no problem. You can share my
yeah,
slide.
so Dr. Hank Paulson says, yes, no problem. Also, this is a good segue here. All of you who have registered for the program, you'll be able to continue to access the program site. A recording will be available, so you'll be able to watch that over as many times if you might like. And you can also continue to share the program so others can watch a recording. And you'll be able to do that by inviting people to register like you did at aarp.org, or I'm sorry, aarpmi.org/disrupt 2023. So please share the program with others that you think might find it helpful. I see Steve asked, Dr. Paulson, you mentioned about blood tests. Are those going to be an alternative to a PET scan?
Yeah, so there are different kinds of PET scans. PET stands for positron emission tomography. It's a way to visualize in the brain the presence of an abnormal protein or abnormal metabolism. There are different types of PET imaging that are used in PD and DLB. They include DAT scans, they include FDG PETs, they include amyloid and tau PETs. They're very expensive. They're not always covered by insurance. And I think the reality is I'm hopeful that within the next 2 to 3 years, there will be blood tests that help us to short circuit the answers there. It's not going to replace PET scan in certain situations. I think, for example, the DAT scan that we can use to determine whether someone has reduction in the dopamine signaling that's so important in Parkinson's disease and distinguishing Parkinson's disease from some other conditions will continue to be used. But I think probably amyloid scans and tau scans we will eventually replace in the Alzheimer's space with blood tests.
Thank you for that. I see a question from Geraldine about sleepwalking. Person who sleepwalks, is that part of all this?
It's a good question. Sleepwalking is a parasomnia. The acting out dreams is literally, typically in a dream state, someone is fighting off things or having arguments. So when we see someone talking in their sleep or moving in their sleep, fighting off creatures they often will describe they have more, if you will, vivid dreams that are a problem. Sleepwalking is a different thing. It's more often seen in younger people and it disappears as we get older, but it is an abnormality of sleep and it can be seen in the synucleinopathies.
And a question here that has come in from, where did it just go? I can't remember who is asking it. Oh, here it is, Geraldine. Barry, you were talking about hallucination, and I want to go back to Barry and also open it up to Drs. Paulson and Director Rossi. When a person hallucinates, do you encourage them to talk about it?
I talk about it. I think that there's no reason why not to talk about it. I talk about hallucinations with my wife, and I also find that there is no difficulty. I've even talked about hallucinations with my friends. I have a very good cadre of friends who are aware of my situation, and they're very much interested. And so I'm lucky enough to be able to talk to them.
I'm going to add on to this. I'm surprised the number of times in the clinic when I ask the question, do you ever see things that's not real, that in a somewhat sheepish way, the patient will say, yeah, I do. And the family had no idea. And I think, in fact, sometimes the troubling psychiatric symptoms that families, they can't figure out why their loved one is acting the way they are, is because they aren't communicating about what's going on. It's not their fault. It's a new thing in their life and they haven't figured that out. So I think it can be very helpful to really have those discussions. It can help to explain why the person's experiencing it. I also want to know, I want to hear, because I want to know, are they troubling or not? Barry mentioned a lot of his hallucinations are not really a problem. The gorilla was a bit scary. They dealt with it in a very creative way by vanquishing the gorilla in the cereal. But if there are really frightening hallucinations, that's a situation where I might actually try an antipsychotic medication to try to reduce it. But if it's a little charming little girl sitting at the end of the bed, or as I had a former football coach who liked to watch games, but there was a guy who sat next to him and his wife would always give him an extra bowl of popcorn for the guy who sat next to him, who was a hallucination. It wasn't threatening. It was just part of his DLB experience. So I think talking about it can be good.
I think a good way of looking at hallucinations is that hallucinations are distressing. And this is one thing I stress to my friends. Hallucinations can be distressing, but they're not dangerous. And they should look at hallucinations in that perspective.
I will say, I think that very often the patients and families feel much better when they realize this is a common thing. It's not some weird thing that only they are experiencing. This is a very common manifestation of DLB and can be seen obviously in PDD as well, and PD even. So it's important to communicate that knowledge to them.
So you said that it's common in Lewy body dementia, and you said also PDD, so Parkinson's
Right. Well,
disease.
you certainly, you most often, and maybe Chris could add to this, you most often see hallucinations in Parkinson's disease when someone gets treated for the Parkinson's disease, and then they have hallucinations as the byproduct of taking the dopamine stimulation. And there's a situation where we have to figure out what's the trade-off. As a person's moving better and less disabled as a result, and we can tolerate a little bit of hallucinations here or that's okay. I don't treat hallucinations per se unless they are troubling to the patient.
Kristen, did you want to add to that? And then I see I've got actually a couple of other questions for you here in the chat as well.
Sure. And I'm just, some of the calls we get on this, some of the hallucinations are distressing and people act on them. And that is a type that we really want to make sure people get the care and, sometimes medication that they need. But a lot of times I'll just say, I think we can all learn something from Barry and his openness to talk about things that are sometimes troublesome, are sometimes scary, and maybe difficult for other people to understand. Because I hear the same thing as Dr. Paulson, where loved ones had no idea that, their loved one was going through, the person with Parkinson was going through, these very vivid hallucinations, sometimes scary, until we bring it up here in the office. So I think that's a great note.
Mm-hmm. So part of it is maybe people don't recognize that it's a symptom that is worthy of bringing up, or sometimes maybe there's stigma. I know that's a big part of what Barry's work has been as an advocate with the National Council on Dementia Minds, is try to fight the stigma so things are out there. So we recognize them.
Yeah, and just lastly, I think there's the non-motor component of Parkinson's disease is not talked about enough. And often it's many different things, but it's depression, it's anxiety, it's apathy. And we want to bring those out of the shadows as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lisa, one of the reasons I think we've supported so many LBD, DLB support groups in the state is that so often people can learn a heck of a lot from someone who's been through it, whether it's someone who's experienced disease, like Barry so eloquently describes his own, proactive approach to his disease, or a caregiver, a loved one who's dealt with it. And so I think those kind of support groups, whether it's in PD or whether it's DLB, can be tremendously helpful to people. So I encourage you to go to the Michigan Parkinson Foundation. Also look at the Alzheimer's Center for the things that we offer, and the Lewy Body Dementia Association as well.
And we have a question from Jennifer. It kind of crosses the conditions here, but she says she's looking for a way to help her dad get more exercise. Now he has Alzheimer's. Yeah. Is there a resource for finding personal trainers with knowledge of dementia?
Yes. You'll find at the YMCA, which I belong to, they have trainers, and a lot of the trainers that they have, have just personal trainers who want to sit down and show them how to do a push-up or lift a weight, but there are also personal trainers who will take the effort to look at the individual and talk to the individual. So the individual maybe have trouble walking. So they'll work with that individual in the area of walking. This is the trainers at the YMCA. Or they may have difficulty with some coordination. They may throw them into the swimming pool and say, hey, this is one way of learning. But yes, there are people in the YMCA, and there are people in other organizations that do specialize in dealing with people who have cognitive issues and certain types of, I hate to use this word, disabilities that requires some support and some assistance.
Yeah, let me follow up on what Barry's saying is that there are personal trainers who do understand the issues that older people experience and older people with cognitive issues or with motor issues experience. There's also physical therapists and physical therapists. I often refer people to physical therapy and I say, I need an aerobic exercise program for this person who has difficulty walking or has profound arthritic changes. And they'll kind of try to develop an exercise program that can work for them. I just want to say one thing about treatments. When I see people in the clinic and I say, I can write a script for you for donepezil, I can write a script for an antipsychotic. I'd really like to write you a script for aerobic exercise 3 times a week where you're doing 45 minutes at a time. I don't care if you're walking briskly, you're swimming, whether you're a U-step walker, whether you're on a treadmill, whatever. But if you could do that 3 times a week, you don't need to have a personal trainer to do that. Nice to have a partner to do that. If you do that, that's the most important thing. And then I'd write a script to say, I want you to have restful, long sleep because I know it's important. I know it's important. People who don't get good sleep or have cognitive issues have horrible days afterwards. So it's really important. Plus, we think it helps clear the proteins. Number 3, social and mental stimulation. Use it or lose it. Use it or lose it. You have to use what you got. And that means I don't care what it is, but something you like to do and involves socialization, talking to people, being with people, family or friends. And the final thing is diet. And diet varies a lot, but just trying to eat a heart healthy diet is best I can say there. That would be the script I would write for those 4 things, more important than any medication I could provide.
Excellent. One other quick question, and then I think we're going to need to move into the final segment. But we did have a question from Kayleen. Dr. Paulson, you had referenced Alzheimer-induced dementia, which her husband has been diagnosed with. And she's asking, how do we find a specialist to help us navigate that? And I'm wondering if you could just tell us in general, how do we find the specialist to help us navigate for the type of condition that
I will do that, but I think Kristen had something she wanted to say. I don't know if she still wants to.
Sure. No, I was just going to say, have your dad check out our YouTube channel as well. All of our exercises are taught by physical therapists, and they all have adaptive modifications as well. So just do that. And for the social component that Dr. Paulson was talking about, call the Alzheimer's Association. They have wonderful community programs that kind of hit on that community aspect and socialization aspect.
Yeah, I would say that in terms of finding someone for an individual who has cognitive impairment, there are many different routes to that. There are geriatricians who focus on this. There are neurologists like me who focus on. There are psychiatrists who focus on these issues, and groups like the Alzheimer's Association can help you find individuals who you can see for that. If you're in the state of Michigan, there are many providers in the state of Michigan who focus on cognitive impairment. Obviously, I know a lot of them in Ann Arbor, but it should not be hard anymore to find someone who understands Alzheimer's and understands Lewy body. I think the mystery about the distinctions between these disorders has gone away a bit in the last decade.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate all of this and all the questions. Unfortunately, we are almost out of time for today's program. But before we go, I want to ask all of our speakers one final question. And I also want to remind all of you to tune in again next week for our final episode in this series. It will be the same time, 11 o'clock Eastern time, and you won't want to miss our next episode. We are going to be joined by 3 national guests, including Sarah Locke, who is AARP's Senior Vice President for Policy and Brain Health, and she's also Executive Director of the Global Council on Brain Health. And we're going to talk about a new report that the Global Council on Brain Health has come out with just this year that looks at racial and ethnic and gender and other disparities in dementia and brain health. So we'll dig into questions like, why are women more likely to develop dementia than men? Why are African Americans more likely to develop dementia than white Americans? And of course, we'll talk about what individuals and communities can do to address these factors. And I want to remind you that you can find the links to these resources that we've been talking about, many of these resources today, if you go to the event page and click on that resources tab that is right underneath where the video is playing, and you'll be able to continue to access a recording of today's program on that page, even after we're done here today. But let's hear once more from our experts today. Dr. Paulson, what's one thing above all that you hope people at home will take away from today's program?
If you're experiencing cognitive issues, it is time to see a healthcare professional because they may help you devise a plan for the future, including medications or, I think even more important, ways to maintain your brain health. That could be a geriatrician or it could be a specialist.
And Kristen, what's the one thing above all that you hope people will take away from today?
Really, that you're not alone. We're here to help, and there's a whole community that's ready to wrap its arms around you. And just to answer another question I saw in the chat, yes, we do serve people with dystonia as well. That's kind of our other related movement disorders. So please call us.
Thank you for that, Kristen. And finally, Barry, what is the one thing, the final bit of wisdom that you'd like to leave folks with today?
I want people to know that people with cognitive issues can and want to contribute to family life, community life, and they don't want to be stigmatized. They don't want to be ignored. They want to be included.
Thank you for that. And as for me, I hope that we're leaving you feeling more empowered and hopeful than you started out. That's all for now. Thank you for joining us today, and I'll see you next week.